a never-ending landscape. The installation is in a constant and seamless loop to refer to the idea of history repeating itself. Here's a video sample of the work. The characters that you see here use paper mache mask, originally from Ecuador. And the idea of the mask talks about identity, especially for migrants, and the situation of being illegal or undocumented, but also assuming an identity when moving to a new place. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
The clothing is as specific as possible, so the characters do not represent any race, region, religion, age, gender, or etc. And by eliminating these specifics, the work can be put into many contexts of displacement and migration, such as Middle East refugees trying to get to Europe, or South and Central American migrants trying to get to the US or Europe as well as the African diaspora. This piece was created during an art residency in Corsicana, Texas. And during a period of 2 months of this residency. And what we can see here is multiple projections onto chiffon fabric. And this fabric allows this image to be transported to the next layer and the next layer, in a way multiplying these characters in an analog way to create this caravan. And there's barbed wire that is used to separate these characters from the viewer's space and vice versa. I'm going to continue to the next slide. So this is the next iteration of this project. It's a site-specific work that was created for the Bass Museum Walgreens Windows space in Miami Beach. Here we have these characters we pasted on the walls, and in front of them there's a fence of barbed wire. This barbed wire is present in all of the iterations of the landscape projects and serves with the idea, as I mentioned before, of segregation and separation, taking into account the presence of the viewer in the space. This works to accentuate that these characters are the others, the ones on the other side, as they are achromatic and larger than life size. So the idea of aliens come into place. And this is the third iteration of the project titled Landscape Paintings. And tapping into art history, these paintings, instead of being horizontal in their composition, as the traditional landscape format, these are vertical, and they focus on the subject in the act of escaping. So it's a play of word that refers to this idea of art history, and rather than focusing on the landscape itself. In these compositions, the landscape has been reduced or simplified to very few colors or geometric forms. The first one is titled Beach, and the second one is titled Llano. The medium, how I compose these paintings, is house paint on canvas, and the prints are on archival cotton paper, and these are wet pasted into the surface of the canvas. So it was important to me to use wall paint and wet paste the prints in order to reference propaganda posters, street art, as it has to do with invasion of property and how migrants are seen as invaders when they enter any country. All my installation works consider the space where it is presented, in this case the formality of the institution, the white cube gallery, and the formality of the medium, which is painting, have influenced the construction and the presentation of the work, how it was created, the size, the display, the direction that the characters are walking, etc. One of these elements was the exit sign that we see here, that allows me to guide these characters to walk that direction.
Yeah, and that's the time already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. That was quite an installation. Thank you. So next we have Carolina Paz. Carolina is an educator and artist born in Sao Paulo, Brazil, founder of the independent art school On Cool Artist, and she's living in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you, Carolina.
Okay. Thank you, Guadalupe. I will share my screen also. Let me find. I will share this video while I will talk. And then, okay, there we go. All right, I've been working in participatory collaborative art projects for the past 5 years almost, and this project specific is Desejo Motivo. In English is could be translated as desire motive, and the idea is to trade paintings, small paintings, for letters that I receive for participants that I call through an open call in front of my studio and on social media, etc. This video is a documentation of the first edition that I did from between 2015 to 2017. And in regard to the subject of the discussion today about center and periphery, and for me, I am an immigrant here in the US, as Guadalupe said, I am from Brazil. And for me, the center and periphery, it's not just about my condition in in another country, but also when I was in São Paulo was and it is considered as the center of the art system, or even the center of the economy of Brazil, of South America. And the discussion about center and periphery was there already. And for me, so this discussion configures the context of where my work is happening, and where the people with whom I am relate are also. So for me, there is a discussion about displacement in this project. There are a lot of layers of subjects happening there, but displacement is one of it. And we have this movement around texts, ideas, representations, symbolic repertoire, images, of course, and the displacement of the artworks, of the painting, and all it brings as meaning in the art history and status and etc. It's a way to displace it from this sometimes elitist and sometimes close art field context to another place that's the place of a different kind of trade, a place where paintings can be taken in any people's hand and can be taken off from the walls of the white cubes. So it is this subjectivity around the paintings and the histories and the in-between people that interests me a lot in this project. So I will just move a little bit just for you to see the end a little bit of how it transforms the space. But once all the paintings are gone in this event, the walls are cleaned. And this is for me also an artwork. It's a gesture for me. And there is a lot of displacement in my head when I see this kind of thing happening. And now I return, after the pandemic, I return with this idea, this project, and I am proposing a second edition. and I am receiving some letters, so you are all invited to participate. It's super easy. Just write me a letter. The rules are here. The rules of the game are here. And we will figure out how I will provide you one painting in exchange of your text. And my address is here. And I believe, of course, other subjects and other languages maybe, and other ways to express, even in English or in Spanish or in Portuguese, that are the language that I can handle, how the content will be present itself, and maybe the center periphery will be there, politics, opinion, and views will be there, pandemic, and pandemic dramas will be there, and all those feelings that we are sharing right now will be there. And my painting changed a lot, so it will be a surprise for everybody, I guess. So that's it.
Thank you, Carolina.
Thanks.
What a great way to break this belief of, the exchange beliefs. Thank you. So next participant is Carla Rippey. Carla was born in Kansas City, and she has lived in Latin America since 1972. She's a visual artist who also taught graphics and directed the Mexico City art school, La Esmeralda. Thank you, Carla.
I need a screen too. Si podemos compartir. Si me das la...
It's open. You can share.
It's open. Okay, where is it? Oh, compartir. Esto de compartir pantalla. Ah, sorry.
Yeah, the green button down.
Uh-huh. All right, yeah. Is that working? Well, so is that working?
Not yet. So yeah, you click share screen or compartir.
All right, so what am I doing wrong?
And then there's you have to choose the desktop, or what are you gonna share?
Well, I have my, okay, wait. All right, let's go to this side. I thought sorry. So first, compartir pantalla.
Yeah.
All right, and then desktop. And then.
There you go.
And then I have to open my.
Exactly.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, we're
okay. Sorry. Well, I work as an artist in Mexico, but I was brought up in a different culture, and I should add the complication that the culture I was brought up in is not the one younger artists have experienced growing up. My formation was a very 20th century one. Wait, just wait a second image. Okay. A non-academic tradition informed by scrapbooks, photographs, books, magazines, and the basis of my practice is working with printed and more recently digital images, reframing, underlining, and subverting the original content through the use of juxtaposition, cropping, and collage. Recently, I came across this quote from the English artist John Stasaker. We live in this voyeuristic culture, but we're actually cut off from what we see, and we're always trying to find a point of intruding back, of making contact with the real. Our relationship with the world is that of a voyeur, and we are always trying to reconnect with that world. I was struck by that strange phrase, intruding back, but I think it sums up a lot of what I try to do with my work, making sense of this visual tsunami for myself, and at the same time, making some sort of statement through it. A basic tenet is that of distance. I don't draw from life, I interpret bound images, but I'm definitely trying to reconnect through my work, but in some sense, I am an intruder. I come from somewhere else, and I appropriate material. Producing in Mexico, my source material has been different in different periods, but to give you an idea, around 2000, I did a wall installation comparing the experience of indigenous peoples from the very south and very north of the Americas, which is the very first image you saw in this talk. Another related to the idea of patchwork, which is this, begins with the Great Plains experience of European migration, my own heritage, which juxtaposed with a Mexican experience in Texas, North Mexico, and Mexico City at more or less the same time frame. I also did artist books, like this one taking details from Peregrinaje, a pilgrimage, or this other called Fumarolo, or smoke plume. Around this time, I was also doing drawings from found photographs, usually reflecting on experiences of women, like this one, which you may have seen at Guadalupe's house. And later in the decade, I started working with a lot of Asian imagery, for reasons I can't really explain, except that maybe they were linked in my subconscious to the English imagery I grew up with by choice, which was very influenced by Asia in the Victorian period. I also did pieces with less specific cultural settings, like From the Finite to the Infinite, or Choose Your Weapon, Catalog of Dangerous Objects. I could consider a lot of this work as exploration of the culture in which I was inserted, or linking up of my own with the other, a sort of manifestation of globalism in a personal sense. But a year or two ago, I started working on photographs of my childhood taken by my father. In one startling sequence I found among his documents, my sisters and I undress. They weren't objects of much interest or morbidity on my father's part. They seemed to be snapped in a moment of careless observation, printed badly once and stored away 60 years. But they gave me a window onto the relationship between my sisters and myself at a very young age. So the problem I had with this material is that since it involves naked children, and part of my idea was to create a vision of infancy that allowed for or explored children's sense of their own bodies. Even though there was no exploitation involved in the making of the photographs, how could I justify creating images that could be interpreted morbidly as some sort of child pornography? This is the dilemma I wanted to comment, my second theme, which is I more or less dealt with by the idea of exclusion, that is limiting what is seen. I had previously used this device in drawings of children taken from photographs that included their dead siblings. In my version, I know the dead brother is there, but you don't see him. There's perhaps a potency in what is off stage. Applying this concept, I redid one long piece whose solution left me uneasy, leaving, for example, this sequence, but taking out one which had the exposed figure. The second part of this series has to do with the relationship of children to animals and the wildness of children themselves. This first image is from a photograph of my father's, but the rest come from Tumblr or other internet sources. This is where I began to think the wallpaper element and the cultural origin of all these images create an echo in me, as they have to do with the sort of cultural references I've seen all my life. But in Mexico, there's very little wallpaper. In general, these are European references. So what place do they have in a Mexican art scene, or even today's globalized scene? Well, actually, nobody else has brought this up when I've shown them online. Nobody has trouble relating to them, but for me, it became a dilemma. When an artist goes from the developing world to the center, say New York or London, and brings along her cultural baggage, it's considered a contribution to diversity and experience to the center. But when somebody comes from the US to Mexico, like me, am I not just adding on another layer of cultural invasion to what is already present in movies and online every day, even though my images are of a very different nature? Or is my conception flawed? Could I be helping to create a different sort of cultural complexity in Mexico? Perhaps the problem in my conception was imagining one complex center made up of multicultural input, when the real answer could be in abandoning the idea of a center and opting for the creation of multiple and varying cultural and geographic entities. So in posing the question, I might have found some sort of answer. That's it.
Thank you, Carla.
How do I get out?
Yes. So just stop sharing.
Yeah?
Yes. Thank you, Carla. That's quite a subject. So
yeah, well, that's why I had to write it down, because it was a lot to get into 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the conversation is open for the audience. I mean, any comments or ideas from this topic? Very welcome.
Well, I could start by talking about the things that I saw in Edison and Carolina's similarities in things that the idea of displacement, migration, invasion, territories. But what was interesting about Carolina's neighbors, there was another kind of solution there, which is the idea of horizontal exchange.
Yeah. attractive. Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
be to open your mics.
Yeah, I think the exchange is a fabulous idea, and it's also about absence and presence. It's also about so many, it brings up so many issues around communication and relationships. The fact that something is translated from one thing to another, the fact that something is there and then it's totally absent. Quite beautiful. I think that was very moving.
I really enjoyed it. I've had difficulties with my internet, so I disappeared for a while, so I couldn't hear all of Eddie's presentation. But out of what I saw, I thought bringing these three artists together, I think it was a very good thing to do, because in each one of them, there is displacement. In each one of them, there is...
There's a phone ringing. Thank you.
And there is also integration. And in that displacement, to have that integration and to have that inclusivity, I just thought that was very powerful. In each one of them, I felt that for different reasons. I won't go into any more detail on each one, but yes, I thought each one very strong and very powerful in diverse ways, but with connecting elements. Thank you.
Thank you, Inés. Yes.
I have a question for Carolina. Are the letters influencing the paintings that you're doing?
In a way of exchange ideas, of a dialogue, for sure. But my paintings, the paintings in this project, and I believe all my paintings, are not like an illustration of the text, but another text, trying to connect with the other person's ideas that were there. Sometimes there are letters that are more sentimental, so I can bring some my own emotions around the subject. It depends on the letter, but yeah, the letter is not, it relates to, but it's not 100% a translation of the content of the letter. It's a dialogue. It's the way I produce my images.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I wanted to say something about the
I would
relationship.
like comments on Carla or...
Okay,
What?
there are two people talking. Okay, we go with Maria Paz.
Thank you. I want to talk about the relationship between the projects. Is really wonderful. I believe that the exchange generates a wealth of very powerful paradigm, and that connect cultures and different visions. And I have a question for Edison about the wire that make the limits of her work and the distance from the visitors or the people that going through there.
Yeah, so I work a lot with space, so it is very important for me to create an experience for the viewer. In this case of landscape, and we see these images of migrants. is like translating how we see the news or what is presented to us by the news, by the media, and how we digest this idea of the migrant, is the idea of the other, those over there. So from that point, there is already a segregation, a barrier. And in the installation of the 3 different iterations of this work, I want the viewer to have that experience that he's separated from these characters, but it works vice versa as well. So it's not only those characters on the walls, but it's the viewer as well that gets separated from, because they cannot cross to the other side. And they cannot experience the whole installation. It's like in the video, in the multimedia installation with the video projections, the viewer cannot cross to the other side. And we have a maze of chiffon fabric that people can wander, but they can't. That's just for the characters that I present.
Thank you. Luciana, I think you were speaking at the same time.
Yeah. I'll stop my video because I'm having issues with the bandwidth. Carla, I was really touched by the work and your questions since I saw the communication and now that you presented. And something really got to my mind, which is besides the shaming of the body and the idea of how the image will be processed by the viewer, this idea that is also present in the other presenters of the otherness and how we are separated to the other one and how we are not the image and so on. But in Carla's work, it got me with the idea, another idea that we've been discussing a lot at this moment, which is privilege, and which I think is the basis of your question on, does the center bring to the periphery or not? And in my perspective, I think everybody brings something from outside in, from inside out. It doesn't matter. It all depends on the relationships being established. But it amazes me that at this point, there is so much shaming in the air, and the idea of privilege is so charged that this doubt arises on who is bringing what where. And I would like to say that definitely your work brings a lot to me. I don't know if it depends on me being from Brazil or being located in Brooklyn, New York, or places I've been before or will go after. I don't think it matters. So you're in mute.
I think having it work really has a lot to do with like trying to communicate a genuine experience, because I think a lot of the trouble with everything that we're invaded with in terms of center images is that they're like commercialized. Like a really good example is what's happened with the Day of the Dead in Mexico, that suddenly the Day of the Dead is full of, in Mexico and the United States, with these images that were like invented in a James Bond movie, which really don't, painting the face and stuff, which doesn't have much to do with the real Day of the Dead at all. So I just think it's good to keep the conversation going and to be aware of how things, like whether it's about the erotic experience of kids and how you communicate it, or anything that there might be a difference between one's own perception and how it's received, and trying to be kind of sensitive to that.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you.
Oh, another theme, another thing that Edison was sharing with what I was doing was this whole interest in masks. I was trying to say disfraz in English, disguise. Oh, could he say something? Could you say something more about that, Edison?
Yeah, the masks have been used throughout my work for the past 5 years. And it's this idea of covering an identity and to talk about especially migration with ideas of illegal migration, being undocumented, assuming an identity in a new place, working with fake documents. And also I was reading last year while I was doing research on this landscape project, how the landscape also defines an identity for whoever lives in those lands or terrains, and not specifically culture, but the landscape, the earth, the land. And so I started questioning myself about how does it affect or change a person's identity, these borders, these lands with barbed wire, or just the fact of traveling in these caravans and crossing a desert or the seas or the many other different types of or ways of migration. So that idea of identity is very present in my work, and in a way also to allow the viewer to put any identity on these characters so they can resonate or identify with the work as well.
Eddie, was this reading based on John Berger by chance?
I couldn't understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you write it in the chat?
Yeah, I wonder, Carla, if the use of masks in your work has something, I mean, has some connection with what you can just say.
If the read was
Luciana, yeah, we can't understand what you're saying. Okay, so, but, okay, Jean?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Carolina, did she have conversations afterwards with the people that sent her the text about their thoughts, reactions, whatever, to the paintings themselves? And was there a continued dialogue with that?
Yeah, for sure. That's why in the first time in the project, that I would love to do the same at the second time, to have a kind of get together, I call it occasion here, to have this moment together so we can like talk about it, because the idea it's letters and paintings are not connected in the moment that we are together, in neither after. So people like try to guess what paintings goes with what texts, and we talk. Some people became friends. I have one, it's my student right now since I don't know, for some time already. And yeah, so the connection is there. And for me, it's I love to build or patronize or catalyze communities around me. So if it is another opportunity to be together with people, for sure this is something in the equation, and it's very important for me.
Thank you.
I
Okay, so
I like the paintings too. The paintings are really nice.
yes.
Thank you, Carla. Your images or photos are amazing. Also.
I like the intimacy of them. It kind of goes with the letters.
Yeah, it's important. The scale. Yeah, the scale is something that's important for me. It should be small and that you can have in your hands.
Okay, so Luciana's question is on the chat. Was the reading on landscaping Changing People's Identity by John Berger's? Otherwise, can you share here? That's for Edison.
I don't really remember. I just answered on the chat. I don't really remember who wrote it. But I was reading also a National Geographic issue last year that was focused on migration from many parts of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when I started thinking about this, I was just seeing that the wallpaper was part of the landscape I grew up in. And it's the very different one here. So yeah, that was a great concept.
And going back to the masks, Carla,
Mm-hmm.
we find this same, I don't know, the same use of the masks with someone who is hiding his identity, or just to make it like a universal identity where anyone could identify.
Yeah, I've worked with that just continually for a long time. The whole idea, and I think it has to do with that landscape change in identities. I also think it has to do with like with the images of the kids and the images where sort of people dressed up, or those disguises. I was thinking about how disguise, you could take on an identity because you want as a way of communicating, but it doesn't always, sometimes it backfires. Like the kids don't see it as what it's supposed to, but it could be a way of bridging the gap or becoming something else. It's very complicated and worth exploring.
Yeah. Let me add something to that. In my case, it's like, for example, all the customs or disfraces that I use in the work try to be as unspecific as possible. So even absurd, going to that extreme. And also all the contradictions of the landscape, like this colorful landscape versus this black and white character in the image. It's just creating these absurd situations and compositions that do not represent anybody, but represent everybody at the same time. So anyone can put on their shoes. That's the way that I approach representing a character in my work.
There's that subtext in my use of disguises too, which there was one particular image in particular where there were like two animals, like taxidermic animals, like stuffed animals. And then there were like two people like disguised with animal skins. And it was like, so it really, it has a lot to do with, people's relationship to animals and how they take them on and distort them or exploit them, and another subtext. Anyway.
Jean?
Yeah, Carla, in your work, there's a dark undertone, which I love. Yeah, and I think the masks, to me, are more connected to that. Kind of like almost with children, the fearful unknown of who is really approaching and who is doing what, and also a dreamlike quality or a nightmarish quality where it's both the child and their feelings and or an adult. It's very complicated that way. And I find that's what's so rich about it. Is its complication of identity.
I showed them to my youngest grandchildren, who are like 7 and 9, and they said, Willa, why do you draw these things? I guess they had a less traumatic childhood than mine.
Yeah, about this use of the animal masks in both works, it reminds me the idea of the concept of becoming. I believe it is the name in English. I prefer in Portuguese. I don't know if in Spanish is the same. In Portuguese, we call devir. That Deleuze, Gilles Deleuze uses a lot in his work, and is this attribute or this condition of a subject, as a person, and its subjectivity to relate and become another thing or another subject or another animal in this case. So there are some possibilities to think even psychologically in this, in regards to this animal relation with this representation. And so a lot of layers can come up from it in both works, I believe.
That sounds really interesting. If you could send me a link on the text or something, that would be great.
For sure, I can. It's easier to find it in English than in Portuguese, so I can share with you here right now.
I use English better than
to find
Portuguese.
it. Yeah.
Also can I go? Yeah. So also the use of, I use animal masks on my work as well. And specifically in this, the first iteration of the landscape multimedia installation. And so it's bringing this quality of the animal into the conversation to cross these different landscapes, but also to talk about the innate quality that is embedded in the genes of all creatures to migrate, to move throughout the land. And we can see many examples like butterflies or salmons, or even a virus like coronavirus is spreading throughout the world. So there is this innate quality of living things to migrate. So with the animal mask, I wanted to tap into that idea, but also the qualities, the superhuman qualities that people need to acquire, or to be able to do the journey.
I love that idea of bringing the animal into the conversation. That's a great phrase.
And I also love the idea of getting people back to the wild aspect of human nature, or all beings' nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beyond any intellectual thought about if it's forbidden or not, but it is embedded in nature, which is great. Yeah, that's a great point.
I just would like to add some little thing apropos the fact that both you, Carla, and Eddie, with your masks, with your animals in a way, because the animal is present in one way or another. It also, the psychological and if you like, philosophical, and also the how one actually tells a story is extremely intriguing, and it actually takes the viewer into this other different realm of questioning what is there. And that, in a way, reminds me of Paula Rego. I don't know if you know her work.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, yes, reminds me of her work and how she uses precisely those issues within her work. And they are there very much in your work, and in a different way also in Eddie's work, in terms of that, yeah, that grounding, those issues that are very present. That's all I wanted to comment upon.
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking there's about using animals and plants, because I'm using like everything 3 steps removed, because I'm always using plants, but in wallpaper and prints, not the actual plant usually. And animals instead of, and also then this other step is that I'm working from a photograph. So it's not even the real thing, that once removed. With animals too, I'm working with like disguises or stuffed animals. And then one step more removed, it's also a photograph of it. So it all goes back to that business of that Stasiker says of distance, which goes back to the barbed wire in Edison's work and etc.
Yeah, and those layers,
Yeah.
there are all those layers that you have to go through yourself, but also the viewer, I think.
We had that rabbit bonding.
I had a question for Carolina. I'm very familiar with Eddie's work and I love it. And Carla, I love also learning more about your work today. Beautiful. And for Carolina, I'm very, very interested in projects that have exchange, that are interactive. And I was wondering if you have any anecdotes or stories about what would be, because I'm assuming some people that are close to you participated, but if you got any unexpected participation, people who really are removed from you. And also, I know that you have some rules, which I haven't read, but did you get any unexpected letters or things that you weren't, expect, things that are out of the ordinary?
Yeah, no, I have a lot of anecdotes, but I can share with you one that actually 2. One was a woman that sent me 2 letters. So I have to paint 2 paintings because I don't select. I paint for each letter I receive. It was funny. And another person was one that was super surprised that I realized the painting and all I promised, because she wasn't believed that it would happen. So when she came and said, no, I have to come here to see if it's true, because I don't believe someone is doing this, So I have a lot, maybe for almost every letter, every person, there is another layer of history attached, and interesting, super interesting. And that's why I believe the bond with each one, it's there. I love to think in this work not as a social engaged art traditionally, that I am super pro of, and I give classes about it. I have a huge respect for artists that do social engagement with communities and so on. But this is a collectivity of individuals, of singularities. So a lot of anecdotes there, a lot of histories. That's fun.
I love it when you said that people were, hesitant, that you were, or they were thinking you were giving out paintings for nothing. I mean, it's how people value their own stories, their own participation, and they feel they're receiving something for nothing, that speaks a lot about how we value exchanges,
Yeah, and for me, those letters are really, and I am super sincere when I say this, they value for me more than the paintings that I did. For sure, it's super sincere, and I cherish all the letters. I am having right now a hard time to find folder of documents with passport and a lot of documents from schools in Brazil and tal, but the folder with the letters are here with me. this one I can't lose at all. So it's the way how you can like imagine how it values for me. It's a treasure.
Yes, Maria Paz here, she's writing about the opportunity to restore the losses with the exchange. I mean, that's a really good point. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Maria Paz. Okay, I don't know if you're able to speak, Maria Paz.
Yes, I wondering if in those works someone think about this exchange, for example, the letters with the paintings, like I give you a so intimate letter in exchange with a symbol of that, you know, the representation of that symbol. And in the same way, that the Indians or maybe the ancient culture think about the mask like change her personality, change is all like a symbolic world. I think is a very important view of those symbols, no?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, sure it is. I believe we all wear masks, but when we forgot, like generally, what means our handwriting action. So when we write with our hands, not typing, and when you receive a text for someone that's strange, because if it's someone that you don't know, it's really intimate, and it's, for me, it has a taste like behind the mask. It's something that's it's really, really inside. Even the person didn't write a lot about themselves or about something super personal, and sometimes people don't, and it's okay. The way it's right, and the paper that's chosen, and the envelope, and the address, everything, it's so, I don't know, close. I feel so close to people when it happens. So it has this exchange of symbols, but has also, like, when the exchange is through symbols, it's mediated, right? But because the contents, the materiality which exchange, for me, my perception is there is something that's a touch. We touch itself somehow. And when we are together, this feeling of intimacy, almost a gathering of old friends or family, there are some points in the experience that are not distant. It's close. The get together is real. And you can like ask for people that participate, because I'm biased, of course. So
Okay, so we're getting to the end, to 3 o'clock here. Is there any other comment about these subjects, or we wrap up now? Anyone wants to make an important comment? It's very interesting because we were talking about the center and the periphery, and how to create reference points for a different cultural context. And it seems that the conversation is heading to go behind the masks, you know? Like, behind the masks, there is closeness, you were saying, Carolina. Behind the masks, people is people. So I find it very revealing that we're talking about masks and what lies behind the masks when we're talking about center and periphery. Probably they are the same, and we just, you know, envelop them in different kind of masks. It's really interesting to hear it.
And masks are totally linked to the idea of identity. The one you have, the one you're losing, the one you're trying to invent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you for the 3 artists who presented today. It was a wonderful and really meaningful presentation. And thank you everybody for their comments. It's been a very, very substantial conversation. Thank you, and see you next month on our December workshop. We'll let you know.
Okay.
Thank you, Piero
you.
Gallery, for hosting us, and hope we can we can make more events like this one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.